Hey there, friends. So today I want to have a discussion on what tools make up the essential bench kit. All right, friends, as we talk about essential tools, the Teacher's Handbook of Sloyd actually breaks them up into two different categories. One category is the set of tools that should be at your bench at all times. The other list of tools is what's available for the group or to share. So keep in mind that when we're talking about a Sloyd operation or a Sloyd classroom, it is, approximately 8 individual benches made up of brand new woodworkers that are learning to make some of these essential household goods, learning the basic skills of woodworking and things like that. So Otto Saloman, in his book, The Teacher's Handbook of Sloyd, came up with a list of tools that he recommends are at the bench for every new woodworker when they're beginning. Do not confuse this with the tools that are needed to get started in your own home shop or garage. This is a bench kit that's already set up when the students come in. Why are we talking about this? Well, in a previous video, I talked about that one of these days, I'd actually like to run a school for new woodworkers, hand tools, particularly young woodworkers, get them into the craft and things like that. So let's talk about what, first of all, Otto Saloman says is the essential bench kit, and then I'll let you know how my thoughts are a little bit different. But again, I want this to be a discussion. I really want to hear your opinions. What are your thoughts? What should be added? What should be taken away? So let's take a look at the book, what the book has to say first. All right. So from the Teacher's Handbook of Sloyd, the very first item on the list is the knife. Uh, the Sloyd knife, or the use of the knife in Sloyd, is a little bit different than what we traditionally think because it is used very much for shaping of wood. It's not for the detailed work that we might think about. It is for actual shaping because there's a lot of carving type activities. The next three are all related to dimensioning wood. So you have the triplane, the jack plane, the smoothing plane for dimensioning rough sawn lumber, a square, marking gauge, compass, rule, and scraper. All right, so what does that look like? First of all, we have the triplane, which is for rough dimensioning. This is where you're taking your board, you're making it flat, you're getting it to the proper dimension. You're really taking off a lot of work, making a board, quote, tried and true. So next to that would be a jack plane. Jack planes can be either wooden or metal. I prefer the metal ones there. Again, this is for quickly dimensioning lumber. And finally, that's finished off with the smoothing plane. And the smoothing plane is how you get the glass-like finish ready for some type of ultimate finish to go in there. All right, of course, we have the square, and the square can come in many different shapes and sizes. We have this vintage style square, combination square works just fine. Compass, I actually do not have a compass. I don't own a compass. I need to get a compass though. That's an important one. I do have a set of dividers that that function similar to a compass. You can scribe out a circle there. So we do need a compass. We need a rule. Now the book actually calls for a couple of different rules. It calls for the standard rule. It also calls for a 2-foot rule that they would have in their pocket. So some type of ruler or rule is good. And finish that off with a scraper. And did I miss the marking gauge? You need a marking gauge and a scraper. So this is the kit that Otto Saloman says should be at the bench for every young woodworker. And I've got some thoughts and disagreements with this. We're going to take some tools away. We're going to add some other tools, and I'll show you what I think should be the essential bench kit for these young woodworkers. So first of all, as we're talking about the the bench kit that I do consider the knife to be an essential tool, but I have a different philosophy than the true Sloyd, whereas a Sloyd knife, the blade is a little bit bigger, it's thicker. It's used, like I said before, for dimensioning of lumber. The Handbook of Sloyd talks about using the knife to cut rabbets and dados and things like that. Um, we have other tools that will do a finer job. So I think the knife is important, but I think it's more for detailed work. So I like a finer blade knife. It fits better in the hand and just works really well. After the knife, we start looking at our collection of planes. Now, I don't disagree that these planes are important for the classroom, especially as a woodworker progresses. They're going to start using rough sawn lumber and they're going to begin dimensioning that themselves. But I'm not convinced that these tools are critical to be at the bench. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the tri-plane. The jack plane, this is my beloved number 5. This has really turned out to be one of my favorite tools. I love this thing. So, but I don't think that's critical for every single bench. However, I do think having a smoothing plane is important. A young woodworker is, as they're smoothing dovetails or they're finishing their wood, I think they really need to be able to learn how to use the smoothing plane and really get well tuned with that. I'm going to add to that a block plane. And I've heard a lot of debate on the internet about whether a block plane is an essential tool or not. You know, one of my favorite woodworkers of all time is Paul Sellers. You've heard me say that name a lot, and he comes right out and says a block plane is not necessary. Personally, I love the block plane. I find it easy to handle when I'm doing small chamfers. And when we're talking about a young woodworker in particular, I think having access to a good quality block plane will really help ensure that they're getting a good finish there. So I'm adding the block plane to that. Other tools that are going to be the same, we have the rule, but I'm going to add to that a tape measure, just a small, this is a 6-foot tape measure, very useful. So we're going to add that. The rule stays, we're adding the tape measure. The compass, I think the compass is important. We should have that on there, but a little bit different. The Handbook of Sloyd focuses very heavily on geometric shapes and making sure all of your circles are exactly the same size. Personally, I think that makes it a little bit too sterile. So you need to be able to make curves, but not necessarily focus so heavily on those geometric shapes. But that's my opinion. My opinion. The square absolutely stays. The marking gauge stays. The scraper, I got mixed feelings about this. Personally, I prefer using a cabinet scraper as opposed to a card scraper. But again, that's personal feelings. Do we need this? I don't know. Right now, I'm leaning towards no, that we don't need a cabinet scraper or a card scraper at the bench at all times. They should be available. They should be available for the classroom, but they don't necessarily need to be there at all times. All right. So I think there's a couple of glaring gaps in the kit here, particularly for a more modern type shop where we are using pre-dimensioned lumber as opposed to rough sawn lumber all the time. So first thing you see here is there's no saw. There's no saw in the kit. For the classroom, there's a full set of saws, but there's no saw for the kit. I think we need to add a Japanese style pull saw. We've talked about this saw before, and really how convenient it is for young woodworkers to be able to use both hands on that. Helps keep their, their little fingers out of the way of a sharp blade. The bench hook. The bench hook is so easy to make. I think there should be one at every bench. The bench hook is listed as an essential tool in the Handbook of Sloyd, but it is a shared tool among many different people. I think we ought to have a bench hook at every single bench. Okay? The other thing that seems to be missing is chisels. Now, again, the chisel is listed as an essential tool for the classroom, but not for the individual workbench. And I think, especially in the more modern age, where we tend to use the chisel more than we would use the knife. So if we're going to go with a detail knife instead of a Sloyd knife, we're definitely going to have to add some chisels. All right. Do they need to be the Narex Richter chisels? No, absolutely not. There's some really good beginner sets out there that I think I'm going to explore. So a standard set of chisels. This Narex Richter set, it has 3. I think we should probably go with the standard set of 4, quarter, half, 3/4, 1 inch. Those would work fine. And if you're going to add chisels, we're probably going to need some kind of mallet as well. So let's add a mallet, and whether that's a shop-made mallet or a purchased mallet, that can be determined. So let's see. Let's flip back over to the presentation and see if I got everything that I meant to. My idea's a little bit different. We need the knife, but for slightly different work, we need the smoothing plane. All right, smoothing plane, like a number 4 smoother. Could be a Stanley, could be Miller's Falls. They're all good. Block plane. I think we should add the block plane. Square, of course. Marking gauge, compass, rule. Keep the rule, but also add a tape measure in there. A saw. We'll have the bench saw, the Japanese pull style, at the bench, and we'll have a full set of saws on the wall. Bench hook at every bench. F-clamps. Did I not talk about F-clamps? I don't think I did. We have discussed in other videos how important it is to hold your work down, especially for these new woodworkers that let their hands wander around. And I've said this in other videos. Every time I have injured my hands, it is because I didn't have the work secured properly, and I'm putting my hand in an area where it shouldn't be. So, very simple, a couple of F-clamps at every bench. Okay? They're inexpensive, and they do a great job holding the lumber down. So, a couple of F-clamps at every bench as well. And finally, we talked about chisels, having a basic set of chisels with either a shop-made or purchased mallet. Well, friends, what do you think about this list? We've got the list recommended by Otto Saloman, which I think was appropriate for their time. Probably not really appropriate for our particular age. But then we've got my list. This is my idea of what I think the essential bench kit could be. There's going to be a separate video where we talk about the bigger list of what are the tools that should be in a classroom environment, focusing on new woodworkers and focusing on the smaller Sloyd projects as opposed to large furniture items. So, again, I said this at the beginning, please let me know what your thoughts and opinions are. I do have a YouTube group. If you want to join the YouTube channel, you can actually get in and contribute to the conversation. But at the very minimum, leave a comment down below on this video. Let me know what you think. All right. Fun stuff. This really is. This is really exciting stuff to think about. And I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Well, so that's going to do it, friends. Till next time, take care. God bless.